The ranch had stood empty for years, until 4 Apache sisters came, begging him to claim them all. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from.
The winter light stretched thin across the open land of Willow Bend, giving the ranch a quiet, worn appearance that matched the man living there. Adam Mercer walked along the fence line with a hammer in one hand and a strip of leather in the other, checking each post the way he did every evening. He had rebuilt most of the corral alone, keeping the work slow and steady. His life had narrowed into a pattern of chores, repairs, and long hours without conversation. After his younger brother died during a cattle drive years earlier, Adam left trail work behind and chose a place where no one asked questions. The ranch suited him because it demanded nothing except maintenance and time. He knelt to tighten a loose rail when he heard faint movement behind him. It wasn't the sound of wind or animals. It was too deliberate, too coordinated. Adam rose to his full height and turned toward the distant edge of his property. 4 women approached on foot, walking in a tightened formation as though they had practiced it out of necessity. Their clothes were worn from the road, their backs straight despite exhaustion, and every step carried the strain of people who had been moving for far too long. Adam's shoulders tensed, but he stayed where he was. He had seen travelers pass through before, but never with this kind of controlled silence. The tallest of the group, Asha, held a calm, watchful expression. Her jaw showed the tension of long-distance leadership, the kind of responsibility that didn't get shared. Next to her walked Leah, younger but carrying more weight in her eyes. She watched the yard closely, evaluating every detail, the broken sections of fence, the open barn door, the distance to the cabin porch. Leah didn't hide the fact that she was measuring the risk of approaching a stranger. Behind them moved Nomi, shorter and softer in manner, her hands clasped in front of her as if grounding herself. The youngest, Sani, kept close to Leah, gripping the edge of her sister's sleeve with a quiet desperation that betrayed the fear she tried to contain. All 4 carried signs of recent hardship, dust embedded in the folds of their dresses, mud dried on the soles of their boots, and the hollow look of people who had lost the place they belonged to. Adam stepped away from the fence, keeping his posture even. He didn't place his hand near the holster at his hip, not wanting to create panic. He simply waited, allowing them to close the distance at their own pace. They stopped several yards from him. No one moved for a moment. Asha took a small breath before speaking. "We need shelter," she said. Her voice held a rasp that came from cold nights and too little water. "Only until we can gather ourselves." Adam studied their faces. He noticed how Leah's gaze stayed locked on him, watching for any shift in his expression. He noticed Nomi kept her shoulders drawn inward, trying to appear smaller. He noticed how Sani kept swallowing as though fighting back tears. Their condition made something tighten in his chest, an instinct he hadn't felt in years. He wondered what had driven them this far. He wondered how long they had been without safety. He wondered if the drifters rumored to be moving north had crossed their path. He couldn't ask everything at once, so he picked the simplest truth he could offer. "You can come in," he said, voice steady. Asha's shoulders loosened a fraction. Leah didn't move until she saw Adam step aside from the path to the cabin, giving them room. When she finally signaled to her sisters, Sani exhaled shakily and followed her inside. The cabin was small, made from rough pine boards Adam had repaired many times. A lantern hung in one corner, casting a low, warm light across the simple furniture. The stove held fading heat, but warmed the air enough to ease the cold from the girl's skin. Adam closed the door behind them and watched the sisters settle in small clusters, unsure of where to stand. Leah remained near the door, positioning herself between her younger sisters and Adam without making it obvious. Her eyes shifted from his hands to his posture to the objects in the room. She wasn't looking for comfort. She was looking for threats. Adam understood the mindset. He had lived in it himself after the night his brother died. He kept his movements slow to avoid adding to their tension. "There's bread," he said, pointing to the table. "It's not much, but it'll help until I heat something." The youngest sister moved toward the food, but Leah reached out and touched her arm. She didn't drag her back. She simply waited, watching Adam again. Only when she decided he wasn't lying did she give a short nod, allowing Sonny to take a piece. Adam felt the weight of that decision. It wasn't trust, not yet. It was survival judgment, a cautious acceptance because refusing meant hunger. The sisters ate in silence. Adam leaned against the counter, observing without staring. He noticed how Asha checked each of her sisters before taking anything for herself. He noticed how Nomi blinked quickly, as though overwhelmed by being indoors after a long time outside. He noticed how Leia kept her back straight, even while chewing, staying ready to move if needed. He wondered how far they had traveled, what they had lost, and whether danger would follow them here. His ranch had been empty for years because he wanted it that way, but watching these young women eat quietly in the lamplight, he felt something shift in him, something he hadn't felt since before the trail accident. "You can sleep in the spare room," he said, gesturing toward the open doorway. "Floor's clean. I'll find blankets." Asha gave a small nod. "Thank you," she said, her tone sincere but guarded. Adam stepped outside again. The cold air hit his face sharply, clearing the warmth from his skin. He paused on the porch with the blankets in hand, looking back at the cabin where 4 strangers now stood beneath his roof. He had not planned for this. His life worked because it was predictable. Repair the ranch, keep to himself, avoid roads that led back to the past. But now, the old house was holding more voices than his own. He felt the weight of that change in a way that made his chest tighten. Inside, Leia watched the doorway Adam had passed through. Her eyes softened slightly, no longer sharp with suspicion, but still alert. She didn't trust him, but she didn't feel threatened, and that was more comfort than she had expected today. The sisters began settling onto the floor of the spare room. Asha murmured something to Nomi, guiding her toward a spot near the wall. Sani loosened her grip on Leia's sleeve for the first time since they arrived. Adam stood outside a moment longer, absorbing the shift in his lonely routine. He hadn't asked for company. He hadn't planned to open his door, but the ranch didn't feel deserted anymore. And for reasons he couldn't explain yet, he didn't mind. The cabin creaked softly as the temperature dropped, the wood tightening in slow pulses that echoed through the quiet. Adam stood near the stove, shifting another log into place. Sparks lifted for a moment, casting short flashes of light that revealed the 4 sisters settling in the spare room. He watched them without intruding, trying to judge whether they needed anything else before he stepped back outside to finish closing the barn. Asha was arranging their few belongings into a neat pile against the far wall. Her movements were controlled, almost rigid, as if she was holding herself together through routine alone. She checked each of her sisters again, her eyes lingering on Sani, who was still trembling from cold and fear. Nomi knelt beside Sani, rubbing her arms gently, her quiet humming barely audible. Leia remained closest to the open doorway, her back straight, her gaze fixed on every shift of Adam's posture. She didn't raise her chin or widen her stance, but her presence held a steady warning. She would act first if any threat appeared. Adam sensed the tension in her shoulders and kept his tone even. "I'll shut the barn," he said. "Then I'll bring water." Leia gave a single nod, nothing more. Outside, the air cut colder than before. Adam crossed the yard quickly, his boots pressing faint marks into the thin layer of frost forming over the dirt. As he latched the barn door, he thought about the weight inside the cabin now. He had lived alone for years, and he could go days without seeing another face. The sudden presence of 4 people under his roof stirred a mix of unease and responsibility he hadn't sorted out yet. He wondered how long they planned to stay. He wondered what dangers followed them. He wondered whether the calm of his ranch would hold. When he returned with the bucket of water, he found Leia standing at the edge of the room. She had not taken a seat. She hadn't rested at all. She watched him place the bucket near the stove, her breathing silent but tight. "You can warm your hands," Adam said quietly. Leia hesitated before stepping closer. She extended her fingers toward the stove, the firelight reflecting a faint tremor in them. Adam noticed the thin scrape on her left wrist, likely from running through brush or falling on rough ground. He wanted to ask what happened, but the stiffness in her expression told him questions could wait. Asha approached next. "Is there anything we should avoid touching?" she asked, serious and direct. Adam shook his head. "Use what you need." She gave a small, grateful nod and returned to help Nomi settle Sani under a blanket Adam had laid out. The cabin filled with a soft rustle of movement, the sound of fabric shifting, water dripping from cold fingers, quiet breaths slowly evening out after the long journey. For the first time since entering, the sisters stopped moving in formation and relaxed into their individual rhythms. Adam sat at the table, removing his gloves and rubbing the stiffness from his knuckles. He watched the fire because watching the sisters too closely felt invasive. Yet he remained aware of Leia's presence at the edge of his vision. After several moments, she finally spoke. "We came from south of the ridge," she said, her tone restrained. "Our camp was attacked 2 nights ago." Adam didn't interrupt. "There were 6 of them," Leia continued. "Drifters. Armed. They took most of what we had." Asha's hands paused, but she didn't turn. "They saw us escape," Leia added. Adam sat straighter. "You think they followed you?" Leia nodded once. "They might be behind us. Or they might have turned for easier prey. We couldn't stay to find out." Her voice didn't shake, but the memory tightened her jaw. Adam read the fear beneath her controlled tone. Fear for her sisters, not herself. He understood that kind of fear. He had lived with it the night he lost his brother, helpless to change the outcome. "You're safe here," Adam said, choosing the words carefully. "The land is open. I'll see anyone coming long before they reach the house." Asha exhaled, the first clear sign that tension inside her had broken slightly. Nomi brushed her hair from her face, still holding Sani close. Leia didn't thank him, but her stance loosened. She stepped back to check on her sisters, brushing her hand gently against Sani's shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. She allowed herself to believe Adam meant what he said. As the hour grew late, Adam prepared his own sleeping spot near the table. He didn't want the sisters waking to find him moving through the cabin. Asha noticed. "You're not using your bed?" she asked. "It's yours tonight," he answered. Leia looked at him sharply, as if trying to determine whether this was kindness or obligation. She found no dishonesty in his expression and said nothing. The lamp dimmed as the oil burned low. The ranch outside settled into deep quiet. Wind brushed lightly against the walls, making the old structure hum in low, steady tones. Sani fell asleep first, her fingers curled in her blanket. Nomi followed, leaning against the wall. Asha sat upright for a long time, keeping watch until exhaustion overtook her. Leia remained awake the longest. She kept her eyes on Adam for a while, studying the way he lay on his side with one arm folded under his head, keeping distance, keeping still. Eventually, she lowered her guard enough to lie down beside her sisters. Before sleep took her, she whispered something in Apache, too soft for anyone else to catch. Adam heard only the tone, relief mixed with worry, held together by the hope that tomorrow might be safer than today. The fire dimmed. The cabin settled. The ranch held 5 lives instead of 1. And for the first time in a long while, Adam didn't feel the night pressing in on him alone. Dawn reached the ranch in slow, pale strokes, spreading a cold, steady light across the frost-coated yard. Adam woke before the sun cleared the ridge, the same way he did every day, but the presence of 4 people sleeping under his roof made the cabin feel unfamiliar. He sat up quietly, listening to the soft breathing from the spare room. There was a kind of order to the sound, steady, unbroken, and it told him his sisters had rested through the night without nightmares or interruptions. He pulled on his boots, careful not to scrape them against the wood floor, and stepped outside. The morning air hit him sharply, filling his lungs with a chill that cleared the haze of sleep. The land was still, except for a thin curl of steam rising from the water trough. He crossed the yard to check the horses and the perimeter, scanning the distance for any hint of movement. No riders, no dust trails, no signs of recent trespass. He felt a brief moment of relief, but he didn't allow it to settle fully. Drifters who attacked a camp would not hesitate to search for survivors, and he needed to be certain the ranch wasn't becoming an easier target than the sisters' old home. When he returned to the cabin, a faint shuffle sounded behind the door. Adam pushed it open slowly. Leia stood near the stove, her hair loose around her shoulders, her posture alert but no longer defensive. She had one hand resting on the handle of the kettle, testing its weight as if unsure whether she was allowed to use it. "I was going to start the fire," she said quietly. "It's already lit," Adam answered, walking past her to add another piece of wood. "You can use anything in here." Leia watched his hands for a moment, trying to understand the boundaries in this unfamiliar place. She stepped back when Asha emerged from the spare room, smoothing her dress and checking on Nomi and Sani, who were still curled under the blankets. Asha's voice carried more steadiness this morning. "We didn't expect to sleep," she admitted. "Not this deeply. Your bodies needed it," Adam replied, keeping his tone practical rather than comforting. "You're safe here for now." Asha glanced toward the window. "Are you sure no one passed by?" "I walked the yard," Adam said. "Nothing close." Leia took in this information with a quiet, measured nod. She didn't ask follow-up questions, but her shoulders lost some of the tightness they held the night before. Sani stirred next, blinking against the morning light. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes before realizing where she was. The moment recognition settled, she looked toward Leia with a silent question, whether it was still safe to move. Leia answered with a soft gesture. "Come," she murmured. "It's morning." The sisters gathered near the table. Adam placed a pan on the stove and cracked the last of his eggs into it. He'd planned to save them for later in the week, but feeding 4 travelers who had fled danger mattered more than stretching supplies. The smell of warm food filled the cabin, causing Nomi's stomach to audibly growl. She looked down, embarrassed. "It's fine," Adam said without looking directly at her. "You should all eat." Asha hesitated. "We didn't bring anything to offer." "You don't owe me anything," he said plainly. That statement lingered in the air. People who lived on the road rarely encountered kindness without a cost. The sisters exchanged quick glances, unsure how to respond. After breakfast, Adam stepped outside again to check the tools near the shed. Leia followed, not out of distrust, but because she wanted to see the land in daylight. Her eyes scanned the open field, the empty stretch of road, and the ridge cutting across the horizon. "This place is isolated," she observed. "That's why I chose it," he replied. She watched him repair a loose hinge on the shed door. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yes." "For how long?" 3 years. She studied him quietly, trying to understand the choices that shaped a man who kept so much distance from the world. "Your work," she said. "Is that why you stayed here? To rebuild everything yourself?" "No," Adam said. He tightened the hinge and stepped back. "I stay because the land keeps things simple. That's enough for me." Leia considered that. She didn't push further, though she sensed there was more he wasn't ready to share. A sudden cry came from behind them. Sani had stepped outside and touched the frost-covered trough, shocking her fingers against the cold metal. Nomi rushed out, pulling her back, murmuring reassurance. Asha followed, adjusting her shawl around her shoulders. Adam stepped aside as the sisters regrouped. Their closeness was instinctive. He could see that their survival depended on staying together, moving together, thinking together. It reminded him of trail crews who relied on unspoken coordination to stay alive. Asha approached him carefully. "We don't want to burden you," she said. "We'll help with work. Anything you need." Adam looked at the ranch, fences needing repair, the barn floor needing sweeping, the well pump stiffening again. There was plenty to do, more than he managed alone most days. "You can help with the morning chores," he said, "if you're able." Asha nodded firmly. "We are." Leia stepped to Asha's side. "Show us what needs doing." Adam met her eyes for a brief second. Her gaze no longer held suspicion. It held intention, readiness, even a hint of determination to contribute instead of being a burden. He pointed toward the fence. "We'll start there." As the sisters followed him across the yard, each carrying themselves with cautious purpose, Adam felt something shift inside him again. He didn't know how long they would stay or what would happen if the drifters returned, but the ranch, once hollow and quiet, now held a sense of direction he hadn't felt since before his brother died. For the first time in years, Adam wasn't moving through his morning alone. The sun rose higher than expected before the cold eased, lighting the frost on the fence rails in sharp, distinct lines. Adam carried a bucket of nails and a coil of wire to the broken section near the corral. The sisters followed at a slight distance, each adjusting to the open space differently. Asha scanned the surrounding land the same way Adam had earlier, assessing escape routes and blind angles. Nomi kept her hands close to her body, careful not to brush against anything unfamiliar. Sani stayed between her older sisters, her eyes darting to Adam's tools with quiet curiosity. Leia walked last, measuring the yard with long, even strides, absorbing every detail without showing uncertainty. Adam set the tools down beside the damaged rail. "This part's rotted through," he said. "We'll replace it." Asha stepped forward immediately. "Tell us what to lift." She didn't wait for praise or reassurance. She just wanted direction. Adam handed her one end of the new board. She gripped it firmly, stronger than he expected, and lifted it without complaint. Nomi came to help, positioning herself carefully so she wouldn't be in the way. Leia watched for a moment before moving toward the coil of wire. "What do you want this?" she asked. Adam pointed to the post. "Right there. Hold it until I secure the first nail." She knelt beside the post without hesitation and pressed the wire into place. Her fingers were steady, though Adam noticed the faint swelling around her knuckles, signs of strain from whatever ordeals they had faced before reaching the ranch. While he hammered the first nail, Sani crouched near the dirt, running her fingers lightly over the frost. She seemed conflicted, trying to stay out of the adult's way, but wanting to contribute. When Adam stepped back to check the alignment of the rail, Sani stood quickly, brushing her hands on her dress. "Can I bring nails?" she asked in a small voice. Adam nodded. "Just set them here." It was the first time she had spoken to him directly. Her voice wavered, but it held sincerity. She collected a handful of nails from a bucket and placed them in a small pile near his boot. Satisfied, she backed up again, her lips curling into a shy expression that vanished as soon as she realized he had seen it. Asha straightened after securing her end of the board. "This land must be difficult to manage alone," she said. "It's work," Adam answered, "but I'm used to it." "You built most of this yourself." "Rebuilt," he corrected. Asha nodded slowly, understanding more than he intended to reveal. As they worked through the next section, the air around them changed. The early stiffness eased, replaced by a rhythm formed from shared labor. Asha anticipated when to lift. Nomi adjusted the wire before Adam asked. Sani fetched tools with increasing confidence. Leia remained at Adam's side the most, holding rails, steadying posts, and pressing wires into place without being told twice. Their movements were different from his, lighter, more cautious, but they were coordinated, and that coordination built trust in small increments. At one point, Adam reached for the hammer at the same moment Leia did. Their hands brushed briefly. Leia pulled back as if surprised, not offended, more startled by the unfamiliar moment of contact. She didn't step away, though. She simply shifted her focus and waited for his next instruction. Adam felt something tighten in his chest, not from discomfort, but from the awareness that she was learning to relax around him. He didn't want to push that process, so he continued speaking plainly, never raising his voice, never crowding her space. When they finished the final rail, the fence stood straight again. Asha wiped her hands against her skirt. "What's next?" she asked, already prepared for more work. Adam pointed toward the chicken coop. "Door's loose. Needs fixing." They moved as a group toward the small structure near the barn. It leaned slightly to the left, its hinges squeaking with each gust of wind. While Adam inspected the door frame, Nomi knelt to pick up feathers scattered across the ground, organizing them into neat piles as if cleaning brought calm. Sani stayed close to her, occasionally plucking loose straw from the dirt. Leia stood near the edge of the coop, watching Adam measure the hinge. "You check everything every day?" she asked. "Usually," he replied. "Why so often?" He hesitated, unsure how much to explain. "Things fall apart fast out here if you don't stay ahead of them." Leia considered that. Her gaze drifted toward her sisters, each working silently, each slowly regaining a sense of stability. "It's not different from us," she said quietly. Adam paused at her words. Leia turned away before he could respond, helping Asha hold the door steady. They repaired the coop together, the sisters following Adam's instructions without missing a beat. By the time the sun climbed higher, the yard no longer looked neglected. The work had reshaped the morning into something productive, even hopeful. When they finished, Adam leaned against the fence, catching his breath. The four sisters stood nearby, waiting, not anxiously, but expectantly, as though they wanted to know what came next. "You've done enough for now," he said. "Get some rest. You'll need your strength." Asha nodded. "We can cook something." "You don't have to," he replied. "We will," Nomi said softly. "We want to help." Adam didn't argue. He simply stepped aside as they headed toward the cabin, their steps steadier than before. Leia lingered a moment longer. "You said we're safe here," she said. "I want to believe that." "You can." She studied his face, testing the truth in his tone. Her eyes softened, not fully but noticeably. "For now," she said, "that's enough." She turned and walked after her sisters, leaving Adam alone with the realization that the ranch no longer felt like a place meant for one person. The midday sun settled over the ranch with a dry stillness that seeped into every board of the cabin. Inside, the sisters moved quietly through the kitchen area, trying to learn the space without disturbing it. Adam stayed by the doorframe at first, watching without intruding. He wasn't used to others working in his home, and the sight stirred something unfamiliar, part caution, part curiosity, part a steady warmth he didn't know where to place. Nomi stood near the counter, carefully inspecting each tin and jar before deciding which ingredients she recognized. Her hands were small but practiced, and the way she organized each item revealed a habit formed from preparing meals in rough, temporary places. Asha helped her sift through what remained of Adam's stores, taking stock of everything with the focus of someone planning for the next several days, not just the next meal. Sani gathered the wooden bowls and utensils, testing each piece for cracks. She held them gently, her fingers running across the grain as if reminding herself what safety felt like. Her movements were timid, but no longer fearful. The night had given her enough rest to lift her chin a little higher. Leia moved differently. She inspected the cabin's corners, noting the condition of the shelves, the window frame, and the latch on the back door. She wasn't searching for flaws. She was learning the structure, mapping it the same way a scout memorized terrain. She checked for drafts where wind crept through the seams, then adjusted a folded cloth to cover one of the gaps. Adam finally stepped in. "If anything's loose, I'll fix it later." Leia turned her head slightly. "Noted," she said, "but it helps us understand the place." There was no challenge in her tone, only practicality. Asha stirred the stew pot slowly. "We'll make enough for everyone. It won't be fancy, but we can stretch what you have." Adam nodded. "Use whatever you need." It was the same offer he had made earlier, but now the words carried a different weight. The sisters no longer flinched at them. They accepted the tools, the space, and the supplies as if a thin line of trust had finally begun to form. While the stew simmered, Adam stepped outside to cut more firewood. The rhythm of the axe grounding him, clearing the tension that had lingered around his ribs since the sisters arrived. With each swing, he thought about their arrival, their exhaustion, and the danger they had escaped. He wondered how far the attackers had traveled. He wondered if the sisters had any other relatives who survived. He wondered why Leia had taken on so much responsibility when Asha was the oldest. He did not find answers, only more questions. When he returned, the scent of stew filled the cabin. Sani was setting the table with careful precision, placing each bowl exactly parallel to the next. She looked up when Adam entered and gave him a small nod of acknowledgement, shy but genuine. Asha ladled portions into each bowl. "Sit," she told him with calm authority. "You've worked enough today." Adam hesitated, unaccustomed to taking orders in his own home, but the firmness of her tone and the sincerity of her intention left no room for argument. He sat where she pointed. Nomi slid a bowl in front of him. "We hope it's all right." He tried the first bite. The flavor was simple but balanced. They had stretched ingredients he often used only for himself and turned them into something comforting. "It's good," he said. Nomi's eyes brightened briefly before she looked down again. The meal passed quietly. Not tense, simply new. The sisters ate with steady, intentional movements, each adjusting to the unfamiliar stability of sitting at a table instead of crouching near a fire or eating while watching the horizon. Halfway through the meal, Sani spoke unexpectedly. "Do you have family?" she asked Adam. The question froze the room for a moment. Asha gave her a sharp look, but Adam lifted a hand lightly. "It's all right," he said. Then he answered honestly. "I had a brother. He died in a cattle drive accident years ago." Silence fell for a few seconds. Sani lowered her voice. "I'm sorry." Adam gave her a small nod. "Thank you." Leia watched him closely during this exchange, noting the way his eyes shifted, the way he swallowed before speaking. She could read pain even when a man tried to hide it. After they finished eating, Asha and Nomi cleaned the dishes together. Sani gathered kindling near the stove. Leia remained near the window, scanning the open land with the focused stillness of someone who understood how danger could slip into the quietest moments. Adam joined her. "Something bothering you?" he asked. Leia kept her gaze on the horizon. "I'm making sure nothing moves that shouldn't." "Anything?" "Not yet." Her voice carried both relief and caution. She lowered the cloth she had used to block the draft and folded it neatly before placing it back on the shelf. "Your home is strong," she said. "It feels steady." Adam wasn't sure how to respond. Compliments were rare for him, and receiving one from someone so guarded made it feel heavier. "It works," he finally said. Leia's lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile. Not amusement, but acknowledgement. As afternoon lights softened, Adam showed the sisters where he stored tools, extra blankets, and firewood. He explained how the well pumps sometimes stuck in cold weather and how coyotes occasionally wandered near the barn. Each sister absorbed the information differently. Asha memorized the practical details. Nomi asked quiet questions about chores. Sani followed every movement with wide, attentive eyes. Leia kept her arms crossed, but listened to every word, already forming her own plan for how to help keep the ranch functioning. By dusk, the cabin no longer felt like a stranger's home to them. Their steps had softened. Their voices carried less strain. Their breathing had settled into a natural rhythm. When evening finally settled around the ranch, Adam stood near the door and watched the four sisters move through the house as if they were starting to believe the walls would hold through the night. He wasn't sure how long they would stay. He wasn't sure what danger waited beyond the ridge. But as he looked at Leia, alert, steady, and gradually lowering her guard, he felt something unfamiliar in his chest. The ranch didn't feel empty anymore. It felt lived in. By the time the next morning arrived, the air held a sharper chill than the day before. A thin layer of dust drifted across the yard in loose spirals, pushed by a wind that had traveled far before reaching the ranch. Adam stepped outside with 2 empty buckets, intending to check the well before the sisters woke. His boots crunched against the half-frozen ground, and the breath rising from his mouth formed small clouds that disappeared quickly. He reached the well and tested the rope. The pulley groaned in a way he hadn't heard since last winter, a reminder that colder nights were coming. He lowered the bucket slowly, listening for any change in tension. The sound echoed faintly, but nothing unusual drifted up. When he pulled the bucket back, he noticed movement near the barn. Leia walked toward him, her hair tied back with a strip of cloth she had washed the night before. She moved with confidence now, her steps steady across the uneven dirt. She carried herself as someone who had grown accustomed to the land within days, not weeks. "You wake early," Adam said, setting one bucket aside. "I couldn't sleep," Leia replied. "Too many thoughts." She looked over his shoulder at the horizon, and the wind carried something strange. Adam raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I heard a distant sound. Hooves." Only for a moment. She crossed her arms. It faded before I could tell the direction. Adam's jaw tightened slightly. He trusted her ears. People who grew up traveling between camps learned to catch small details long before others did. "I'll check the north ridge," he said. Leia stepped closer. I'm coming. Before he could answer, Asha appeared at the cabin door, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. She scanned the yard, then approached with controlled strides. What's happening? She asked. Leia answered before Adam could. I heard riders. Asha's eyes sharpened. How many? One. Maybe two, Leia said. It wasn't clear. Adam kept his voice even. Could have been travelers passing between towns. Or it could be them, Asha said quietly. The weight behind her words settled over all three of them. Adam didn't dismiss the possibility. He didn't minimize it. He simply nodded. We'll check. Asha hesitated. Should one of us stay with the younger two? Leia answered with a firm nod. I'll go. You stay. Adam could see Asha didn't like the arrangement, but she trusted Leia's instincts. She stepped back, directing her attention toward the cabin where Nomi and Sani were still asleep. Adam saddled his horse, tightening the cinch strap until the leather creaked. Leia stood beside him, examining the tracks near the barn. Her brow furrowed. These are fresh, she said. Not ours. You sure? Adam asked. We walked everywhere yesterday, Leia replied. And these prints are deeper. A heavy horse. Someone riding fast. Adam crouched beside her. She was right. The pattern in the dirt didn't match his animals or the sisters' movements. He mounted, then extended a hand toward her. Come up. Leia hesitated for half a second. She wasn't used to taking help. Not from strangers, not from anyone. But after everything that had happened, caution now needed to coexist with practicality. She gripped his forearm and swung up behind him. Her hands settled cautiously at his sides. Adam felt her tension, not from fear of him, but from the unfamiliar closeness. She leaned just enough to keep her balance without depending on him more than necessary. He nudged the horse forward. They rode out onto the north ridge, the land widening in every direction. The wind carried a sharp bite, and the sky stretched open with no clouds to hide beneath. They spotted the tracks within minutes, two sets side by side, heading west. Someone passed through recently, Adam murmured. Leia leaned forward slightly to study the impressions. These prints came from the direction of our camp. Her voice grew tight. I recognized the pattern on this one. Their leader rode a horse with a split shoe. The realization hit them at the same time. They're not far, she continued. Adam scanned the horizon. They're not coming here. Not yet. They cut west. Leia exhaled, a quiet sound full of strain. They're searching. They don't know where you went, Adam said. You changed direction twice before reaching the ridge. You said so yourself. Desperation makes people dangerous, Leia replied. If they realize we survived, they won't get this far without me seeing them. Leia didn't answer. She simply looked out over the land with a long, steady gaze that spoke more clearly than any words. Staying still was no longer enough. They needed to prepare. On the ride back, silence hung between them, but it wasn't distrust. It was calculation, Leia planning what the sisters needed to stay safe, and Adam considering what changes he had to make to the ranch. When they reached the cabin, Asha was waiting on the porch. Nomi stood behind her, holding Sani's hand. The younger sister's eyes widened when they saw Adam and Leia return together, the worry etched on their faces turning into cautious curiosity. What did you see? Asha asked. Tracks, Adam said. Two riders passed north of here. Asha stiffened. Them. Possible, Leia answered. A brief silence fell. Nomi's grip on Sani tightened. Adam stepped onto the porch. Listen, if they show up, I'll deal with it. But we're not at that point yet. Asha swallowed hard. What do we do now? You help me strengthen the ranch, Adam said. We reinforce the barn, the cabin doors, and the fences. Nothing gets close without being noticed. Asha nodded slowly. Leia met Adam's gaze. We'll follow your lead. The unity in that moment, unspoken, instinctive, shifted the air around them. Adam had expected temporary guests, frightened and scattered. Instead, he had people ready to work beside him, people who trusted him enough to plan for tomorrow. He stepped back and motioned toward the yard. We start today. Leia followed him first. Asha gathered tools. Nomi and Sani stood straighter than before. The household had changed again, not through fear, but through determination. The ranch no longer sheltered strangers. It sheltered a group preparing to stand their ground. By mid-morning, the wind had settled, leaving a heavy, unmoving stillness across the ranch. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that made people pause between tasks and glance toward the horizon without knowing why. Adam felt it first while checking the latch on the barn door, a sense that the day held more weight than it should. The sisters felt it too, each responding in their own way. Asha moved with sharper focus, her eyes following every sound in the yard. Nomi worked faster than usual, collecting scattered tools and sweeping debris from a porch. Sani stayed close to her older sisters, mimicking their movements to hide her nerves. Leia, however, walked straight to the corral fence with an expression that mixed resolve and calculation. "We need to determine where the land is vulnerable," she said when Adam approached. He nodded. "Start with the north side. It's the most open." Leia set off without hesitation, her steps deliberate. Adam followed, carrying a length of rope and a small tool pouch. They walked the perimeter together, stopping to examine weak posts, loose rails, and any place where someone on horseback could slip through unnoticed. At one point, Leia knelt beside a section of flattened grass. If they came through at night, this would be the easiest entry, she said. They could ride in fast, no obstacles. Adam crouched beside her. "We'll brace it." She straightened, brushing dust from her hands. "Your land has strong points. We just need to make them clearer." Her words were straightforward, but Adam heard something more behind them. She wasn't speaking only about the ranch. She was speaking about survival, structure, and the need to rebuild what had been broken in their lives. They continued along the ridge, marking problem areas with stones. When they returned to the yard, Asha was already waiting with a bundle of wooden stakes. "I saw you marking the weak spots," she said. "We can reinforce them with these." Adam took a stake, testing the weight. "That'll work." Asha handed several stakes to Leia, then moved toward the fence line without hesitation. Her leadership was steady and practical, shaped by necessity rather than temperament. While the older two sisters worked with Adam, Nomi and Sani tended to the animals. Nomi approached the chickens with the patience of someone accustomed to earning trust in small steps. She spoke softly to them, checking their feed and water. Sani swept the barn aisle, clearing out old straw and leaving the place neater than Adam had managed in months. Adam watched her for a moment. When she caught him looking, she straightened her posture and tried to hide a small, proud smile. "You're doing good work," he said. Sani's cheeks warmed. "I want to help. I don't want to be afraid all the time." "You won't be," Adam replied. His voice was firm. Not a promise, not a reassurance, but a truth he intended to uphold. By noon, they had reinforced 3 sections of the fence. Adam hammered stakes into the dirt, while Leia tightened wire, her hands moving with a quiet efficiency. Asha secured posts behind them, double-checking each connection. As the sun climbed higher, Leia wiped sweat from her brow and paused to assess the work. "They won't get through here without effort," she said. "That's the goal," Adam answered, brushing dirt from his gloves. Leia glanced at him. "You're calm about all this." "I've had trouble finding me before," Adam said. "I've learned how to stay ready." She studied him briefly, sensing a history he hadn't shared. She didn't push. Instead, she carried another coil of wire toward the next post. Asha approached as Leia walked off. "She respects you," Asha said quietly. "That's not easy to earn." Adam blinked, surprised by her straightforwardness. "I'm just doing what needs doing." "Not everyone does that," Asha replied. Before Adam could respond, Nomi called from the porch. "Lunch is ready." Her voice carried across the yard with more confidence than usual. They gathered at the table, eating bread, stew, and sliced apples. The food wasn't fancy, but it warmed them after working in the cold. Sani leaned against Asha's shoulder, tired but peaceful. Nomi sat straighter than she had days earlier, pleased to see everyone eating what she had prepared. During the meal, Asha placed her spoon down. "We should talk about tonight. If those men come, we need a plan." Adam nodded. "I'll keep watch. The lantern in the barn has a wide glow. If anything moves near the ridge, I'll see it." "I'll take second watch," Leia said immediately. Asha frowned. You need rest too. So do you? Leia countered. I can stay awake. I've done it before. Adam looked between them. We'll rotate. No one stays out all night. Asha accepted the compromise with a slow nod. Nomi looked down at her bowl. Will they really come? Adam's voice was calm. I don't know, but we'll be ready. Sani reached across the table and took Nomi's hand. Her touch was shaky but brave. Nomi squeezed her fingers gently. After the meal, Adam led Leia to the barn to prepare for the evening watch. He showed her where he kept the lantern oil, the extra rifle shells, and the old pair of binoculars he used when scouting cattle herds. Leia ran her fingers along the wooden railing near the horse stall. This place feels protected, she said softly, like it holds itself together even when everything outside tries to break. Adam leaned against the post. That's what I've tried to build. You've done well, she said, turning toward him with an expression that held gratitude and a kind of respect she rarely displayed openly. Adam met her eyes. There was no fear in them now, only determination. We'll get through this, he said. Leia nodded once. Yes, we will. Outside, Asha's voice carried across the yard as she instructed Nomi on stacking firewood. Sani chased a loose chicken with clumsy persistence, her laughter a soft break in the tension. For the first time, Adam realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a ranch preparing for trouble. It was a group of people becoming a unit, a makeshift family learning to stand together. And the night ahead, whatever it held, would not be faced alone. The sun dipped behind the ridge without ceremony, leaving the ranch wrapped in a muted blue light that flattened every surface and stretched shadows across the ground. Adam lit the lantern at the barn entrance, adjusting the flame until it cast a wide, steady glow over the yard. He checked the rifle twice, not out of fear but habit, then leaned it against the railing where it would be within reach. Asha and Nomi finished clearing the dinner dishes, their movements quieter than usual. Sani sat on the floor near the stove, combing her fingers through a piece of frayed twine, her expression caught somewhere between exhaustion and anticipation. She had overheard enough talk about riders to understand danger, even if no one spelled it out for her. Leia tied her hair back and stepped in her coat. The fabric hung loosely from her shoulders, but she wore it with purpose. She approached Adam without hesitation. What do you want me to watch first? She asked. Start on the north side, Adam said. Check the ridge every few minutes. The lantern will help you see any movement. I can handle it. I know. Their eyes met briefly. It wasn't a moment of tension, more an acknowledgement that both understood the weight of the night ahead. Leia took the lantern from the hook and walked into the cold air, her steps slow at first as she adjusted to the dark. When she reached the fence line, she paused and scanned the ridge, standing completely still. Adam watched the lantern's glow drift across the yard until it settled into a pattern. Leia moving from post to post, stopping only when the wind shifted or a distant sound forced her to listen harder. Inside the cabin, Asha settled Nomi and Sani near the fire. She kept her voice low as she spoke to them in their language, offering comfort without sugarcoating the reality of the situation. Nomi leaned against Asha, her eyelids heavy. Sani fought sleep, wanting to know what was happening outside. Adam stepped into the cabin doorway. They should rest, he said quietly. Asha nodded. I'll stay with them. He hesitated. You should sleep too. You'll take over Leia's watch later. Asha gave a small, tired smile. I'll manage. Adam didn't argue. He knew when a person needed control to feel steady. He returned to the yard. The cold deepened with each passing minute, sharpening the edges of the wooden posts and stiffening the ropes near the barn. He pulled his coat tighter and walked toward the corral to begin his own rotation, checking each line of sight the way he once did during long cattle drives. When he reached the far end of the fence, he found Leia standing with her back to him, lantern angled toward the ridge. She didn't turn until he was close enough for the ground to crunch under his boots. Anything? Adam asked. Just wind. She lowered the lantern slightly. But it keeps changing direction. Makes it hard to listen. Adam looked out at the open land. If anyone rides through the night, we'll know before they're close. Leia shifted her weight. Her breath formed small clouds that drifted away across the frost-chilled air. When they attacked our camp, they didn't announce themselves. They came from a side we least expected. Adam's jaw tightened. That won't happen here. Leia studied him, searching for any trace of empty reassurance. She found none. His posture was steady, his grip on the railing firm, his eyes focused on the horizon with practiced vigilance. You've lived ready for trouble a long time, she observed. Long enough, Adam replied. They fell into silence, but it wasn't empty. It was thoughtful, grounded in the slow recognition that neither of them was the same person they'd been a month ago, or even a week ago. Leia adjusted the lantern and took a small step closer to him, not in fear or uncertainty, but in alignment. She positioned herself at his side, fitting into the watch the way a second sentry naturally finds their place next to the first. How far did you travel after the attack? Adam asked. Leia kept her eyes forward. 2 nights without stopping. We hid during the day, moved when the stars gave us light. Asha pushed us hard. She thought we could lose them after the ridge. And you? I wasn't sure. She paused. But coming here, it felt different. Still does. Adam absorbed her words. He wasn't one for emotional comments, but something in her tone carried a weight he understood. She wasn't speaking about the land. She was speaking about safety, something she rarely admitted needing. A distant howl broke the quiet. Not human. A coyote. It echoed across the valley before fading. Leia released a slow breath. My watch is almost done. I'll take it from here, Adam said. You should rest before the next shift. I'll wake Asha. You go first, he said firmly. She needs more sleep than she'll admit. Leia hesitated, then nodded. She handed him the lantern, and her fingers brushed his briefly. Unlike the first time their hands touched, she didn't pull away sharply. She just let the moment pass, calm and unforced. As she walked toward the cabin, Adam watched her steps. She moved with tired precision, but her posture remained upright. The cabin door opened softly, casting a warm glow on her face before closing behind her. Adam turned back to the ridge. The night was long, but the ranch didn't feel vulnerable. It felt prepared. Every repair, every reinforced post, every person inside the cabin contributed to a sense of readiness he hadn't experienced since his youth, before tragedy altered his life. Hours passed with nothing but wind, distant animal calls, and the hum of the lantern. When Asha finally emerged to relieve him, Leia followed behind her, awake again sooner than expected. Adam lifted the lantern. Nothing tonight. Asha exhaled. That helps. But Leia didn't look relieved. She studied the shadows one more time before stepping closer to Adam. They're out there somewhere, she said. But now they won't catch us unprepared. Adam nodded. No, they won't. The three stood quietly for a moment beneath the fading stars. Not a family yet, but something forming, stronger than fear, and steadier than the night. Tomorrow would come with work and new decisions. But tonight, the ranch held firm. The sky lightened slowly, shifting from deep charcoal to a muted gray that stretched across the plains. Adam stood near the barn with a rifle in hand, watching the horizon for any sign of riders. After a long night of shifting shadows and restless wind, the land finally settled into a calm that felt genuine, not deceptive. He lowered the rifle and exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing for the first time in hours. Inside the cabin, the sisters stirred awake one by one. Nomi rubbed her eyes and blinked toward the stove, relieved the fire still held aglow. Sani stretched beneath her blanket, her face free of the fear that had haunted her for days. Asha sat up slowly, scanning the room before relaxing into the realization that no danger had arrived. Leia stepped outside first. She crossed the yard with her coat pulled tight and joined Adam near the fence. You stayed up after I left, she said. He nodded. Wanted to be sure. And now? Tracks are cold. Whoever passed near the ridge isn't circling back. Leia studied his face, searching for any hint of uncertainty. She found none. So if it's over, she said quietly. For now, Adam replied. But I think they've moved on. Leia released a long breath. It wasn't dramatic, just the steady release of pressure she had been holding since the attack on their camp. She looked around the ranch, taking in the freshly reinforced posts, the swept barn, the organized tools, the smoke rising from the stove vent. "This place held," she said. "It did," Adam answered. They walked back toward the cabin together. The air was crisp, but the early sunlight cutting through the cold made the yard look different. Less like a temporary stop, more like somewhere meant to hold people, not just a man avoiding the world. Asha met them at the porch. "Anything new?" she asked. "Nothing," Adam replied. "No riders. No noise." Asha's shoulders dropped, the tension leaving her posture all at once. "Then we can breathe," she said. Sani came running out next, her bare feet slapping lightly against the wood. "We're safe." Adam crouched to her height. "Yes, you're safe." Sani wrapped her arms around his neck without hesitation. The gesture caught him off guard, but he set a steady hand between her shoulder blades and allowed her to cling for a moment before she stepped back. Nomi peeked out from behind the doorframe, her expression hopeful. "Can we stay outside today?" she asked softly. "You can," Adam replied. "You all can." The sisters exited the cabin with a kind of cautious excitement, each taking in the morning as if it belonged to them for the first time. They walked the yard, inspecting the things they had helped repair. Sani touched the reinforced fence rail with her fingertips, testing its strength. Nomi lifted the latch of the chicken coop and smiled when the hinge no longer squeaked. Asha stood with her hands on her hips, surveying the land like she was evaluating a territory she finally meant to claim. Leia remained beside Adam. She watched her sisters with a quiet pride, though the lines of caution that usually marked her features had softened. "They haven't smiled like this since before the raid," Leia said. "They haven't let themselves feel anything good for a long time." Adam looked at her. "They earned this. You all did." Leia's eyes moved from her sisters back to him. Something resolved inside her. Not sudden, but steady, like a decision she had shaped over days without speaking it aloud. "We don't have anywhere else to go," she said. Her voice wasn't asking permission. It was presenting truth. "Even if the danger is past, there's nothing waiting for us beyond the ridge. No home, no family left." Adam listened without interrupting. "This ranch gave us shelter," she continued, "but also gave us work. It gave us order. It gave us a chance to stop running." She looked directly at him. "If you'll have us, we'd like to stay." Adam didn't expect the weight those words carried. He had lived alone for years, convincing himself solitude was easier than rebuilding what loss had taken from him. Yet standing here, surrounded by 4 women who had breathed life back into the ranch in less than a week, he understood something clearly. The land didn't feel empty anymore because they had filled the silence with purpose. "You're welcome here," Adam said simply, "as long as you choose to stay." Leia didn't smile, not at first. She just absorbed the words, letting them settle. Then the corner of her mouth lifted in a small, sincere expression he hadn't seen from her before. Asha approached them. "We can help with everything: cooking, repairing, tending the animals. We won't sit idle." "I know," Adam replied. Nomi and Sani arrived next, standing shoulder to shoulder with their older sisters, waiting for whatever came next. Adam looked at the 4 of them. "Then let's call this home." A quiet warmth rippled through the group, subtle but unmistakable. Leia stepped closer. "If we stay," she said, "we stay fully. We don't take without giving. We build something here. All of us." Adam nodded. "That's the way it should be." For a moment, they just stood together, the early sun painting soft light across the yard. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was steady and real. 2 forces choosing the same future for the first time. Asha touched Leia's shoulder. Nomi clasped Sani's hand. The 4 sisters looked out at the ranch, not as visitors, but as people who finally had ground solid enough to stand on. Leia turned to Adam one last time. "We'll make this place stronger together," she said. Adam held her gaze. "I want that." There were no threats on the horizon, no lingering shadows, no unspoken questions left unresolved. Just a ranch no longer empty, a man no longer alone, and 4 sisters who had found the one place willing to claim them without hesitation. The story closed on a morning where everyone stood exactly where they needed to be, not by chance, but by choice.